Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. It's a beautiful day here in the UK. The sun is shining and the birds are singing. So I thought, what better way to start the day than talking about really evil people in my book? Um, that is to say that when I approached writing villains, um, I've kind of approached it in three ways. There's the more obvious villain, who is the kind of the big bad, and that person is almost caricatured in a way. And I've tried my best not to make them too dimensional in how they approach things. Another villain is the kind of damaged character who had a very traumatic history and now, is portrayed as someone who wants to exact revenge on the world. Um, and another villain is the more subtle, less obvious one that cloaks themselves in good intentions. So writing villains, in some ways, is probably more fun than heroes, because it just feels like there's a lot more to get your teeth stuck into. They feel I quite enjoy exploring the characters, exploring their motivations a lot more. And when I approached Fen, well, of course, as a Darkling, everyone instantly sees him as a villain. He is from a race of people who are raised on a diet of violence, taught that conquest and war is a way of life, taught that you don't really have loyalty to anybody unless you can use them, and that you have a shared purpose, but ultimately the purpose is to look out for yourself. So to everybody else, he's the villain. And indeed, the world in which we find ourselves in the book has been racked by wars, the Darkling Wars, as it's called in the book, for on many occasions throughout for the last hundreds of years. Once the Darklings realised they could cross over through the cracks in the mirror, the glimpse, as I call it, and they could exist on the other side, albeit in the cover of night, out of the glare of the sun. They began to realise that their purpose was to cross over, and to slay the followers of Sol, in a kind of huge act of revenge for their father, Loon. So that's already been kind of set up by the time Fen arrives. So of course, when he shows up to a village, or a town, people are instantly thinking, "What on earth's going on?" Not just because of his reputation, because of the way he looks. He has sort of grey skin, sort of purple eyes, white hair, but also because he seems able to walk around in the sunlight, which would otherwise have killed the rest of his kind. So he's a bit of an enigma, and initially very much painted as the villain. Of course, as the book goes on, we discover the journey that he's on and the trials and the struggles that he's going through to find a way to exist beyond that kind of life and to prove people wrong, essentially. Not just because he feels it's his right or his destiny to prove people wrong, but because it effectively leads to an easier life for him. He doesn't want to be an object of ridicule. Who would? Now, for a lot of people, that might send them further down a path of violence and further down being a villain. But for Fen, in a sense, it's a calling to try and be a better person. Now, obviously, there are other villains in the book who give him a run for his money in the kind of evil stakes. But I didn't want to make those villains, again, two-dimensional. I didn't want to make them, oh, well, they're bad because of X. It's so much more complicated than that. And I think sometimes the best villains are very charismatic people. They're able to manipulate others, and dress it up like they're doing them a favor. But manipulating other people is a skill unlike any other, along with any other, I should say. And if you want to be good at it, you have to practice. So The other characters in the story, some of which are more practiced than others, and they've been using that for quite some time to try and get what they want. Um, but I think also the villains I've written are in many ways damaged, very, very highly damaged people. People, a person who's had a traumatic um, childhood, a person who has been through personal sacrifice, who's given up a lot or who has lost a lot. And it's quite interesting and it's quite fun to decide which way we want to steer them. Do I want to steer them towards redemption? Do I want to steer them towards doubling down on embracing the anger and the resentment that they may feel now that they're a grown adult? So that was very much a fun part of it. But the third type of villain is very much kind of someone who kind of um, dresses up an ideology about wanting to make the world a better place, and they are for all intents and purposes perfectly they're a perfectly nice person. They are helping other people. They're very, very selfless in their actions, and you couldn't necessarily label them as a villain per se, but they're definitely someone to watch, someone to keep an eye on. And the more that you peel the layers of what's going on, the more you realize that sometimes a person is a villain because he's propped up by even worse people. And I really enjoyed putting somebody on a pedestal for all the wrong reasons. And that is part of what I explore in the book. And of course, in doing so, you align their motivations with the world building that's been done. So that it's not giving anything away particularly by telling you. You'll hear a lot about something called the Restoration. The Restoration is an ideology. It is a calling for a lot of people. It is something that people of a certain faith are working towards achieving. And it is running along the theme that the world is full of darkness and full of bad things. And there are a chosen few, a chosen one, in fact, and that person's followers who wish to rid the world of that darkness, and are seemingly doing so in the best way that they can to encourage others to be kind, to encourage others to love, and be selfless in their goals, encourage others to sacrifice for the good of for the greater good, and be live a almost virtuous life, and in that regard help people understand and see that there's a better way of living, which of course it doesn't quite work out that, or it doesn't start to work out that way. And we see certain people who, while they are happy to embrace the ideology and embrace the faith, it can twist a person into something a little bit more nuanced, something a bit darker, and ultimately can create the very thing that it's trying to set out to rid the world of. A corrupt, twisted version of itself, expressed through somebody's beliefs and the anger and the resentment and the trauma that they experienced when they were younger. And ultimately, the natural conclusion to ideology is a kind of cult status in a sense, where people are encouraged to congregate for a shared purpose, but the shared purpose starts to corrupt people. It starts to corrupt the town where the book is set, and Fenn ultimately realizes this and has to start to figure out what he's going to do about it. especially because, again, without giving anything away, there's something about that ideology, something about that following that he feels a connection to, and he doesn't understand why. So yeah, it was. It's been really interesting, sort of creating villains and trying to avoid them not being too one or two dimensional. Give them a bit of depth, give them a bit of purpose, um, and give them a resolution of sorts. And not every villain has to explode or burn to death or die or you know, and not every villain needs to be redeemed. I enjoy being a lot more grey and nuanced about the outcomes for villains. The reader has to be satisfied, and the other characters around the villain have to get something out of it. I think because it just makes the payoff a little better for me. So yeah, just a quick video to sort of go through my approach to villains. Trying not to be straightforward with them, trying not to be too flat, and trying to give them a bit of purpose and justification and a belief system that they believe that what they're doing is wholly justified. Um, and I hope ultimately that you enjoy it. So thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be giving everyone an update soon on the progress of the book. It's almost ready for copy editing, and I'm going to start going through some more material around how I'm constructing my query letter, what my hopes are for getting an agent, and if not, what kind of route I'm going to go down for self-publishing, and some of the inspirations I've drawn from. And we're going to be exploring a little bit more about the religious ideologies that are at play in the book, and a little bit more of the world building and how that links back to the characters I've created. So yeah, thanks very much, and I will see you in the next video.